إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه نستغفره نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا أنتم مسلمون. What I have said in English is all praises belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him, we seek His help. We seek His forgiveness and we seek His forgiveness and we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the evil of our own self and our evil of our own deeds. Whomever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, there is none that can mislead. And whomever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows to go astray, there is none that can guide. I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without any partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is his last servant and messenger. O you who believe, fear Allah as He ought to be feared, and die not save as Muslims. To proceed, the Quran is a book of reflection, a book of instructions, a book of guidance. And in its totality is guidance for mankind. What we find in Quran is the reality of our own circumstances, conditions within our society, within man himself, right? We find the diseases and the cures that exist within man himself. In Surah Al-Araf, we find the story of 4 particular people. In those stories, we find the diseases of mankind. In those stories, we find the diseases of mankind. And the people of Ad, they were sent with their messenger, Hud. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us in this surah that they are a people that was steeped in arrogance. In Surah Fusilat, Ayat 15, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us from their lips the magnitude of their arrogance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah 41, Ayat 15, Man ashaddu minna qawatan awalam, which is, they said, who is more mightier or more stronger than us in strength? This is the height of arrogance, and we see that today. We see that very spirit living itself out within politics, within street corners, within homes, within schools, within job places, you name it. We see this arrogance playing itself out. We see it play itself out in the culture that put its faith in military power. We see it play itself out in the culture that put its faith in celebrating violence. We see it in the culture of gun violence, gangs, and political arrogance. But the Prophet, alayhi salam, Hud, he confronted power with humility. The Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he confronted the Quraysh and their arrogance with dignity. We find a model in their approach that as da'i, as a da'i, as a caller to Islam, we must embody these characteristics. We must acknowledge the world in which we live in. Another one of the people that are mentioned in the surah is the people of Thamud. Again, the people of Thamud, they were advanced in their time in reference to architect and different advancements. They had surpassed those before them. In that arrogance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them in the Surah Al-Araf, ayat 74, and you have carved out houses out of the mountains with great skill. So remember the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not spread corruption on earth. And another ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in reference to them, you have carved out houses out of the mountains with great skills. Will you not have taqwa? Will you not fear Allah? We live in a society, in a world right now, not just in the one place. I mean, this is really rapid, really everywhere now. Even Africa is growing in reference to technology and just the building and progressing from a materialistic world perspective. A'udhu billah, we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from being like the people of Thamud, who end up advancing from a materialistic perspective, but they end up decreasing spiritually. We see that in our society today. We see people that are financially great, right? They financially off, right? They financially off, they doing good, got nice jobs, $52, $55 an hour, you know, good money. I didn't see people with good money. But at the end of the day, the internal soul is empty. They still unhappy. The house ain't a house. It's a stress box for them, right? The kids ain't the kids, even though they raised them. And they don't know what to do. They gave them everything. This is the world we live in. And this is the quality and characteristics of the people of Thamud. Again, they were sent, and Salih was their Rasul, alayhi salam. And in his approach, he didn't approach them with arrogance, he approached them with a reminder. They had, in our day and time, we have technology, we have skyscrapers, innovation, and yet we see the emptiness spiritually everywhere. Everywhere, literally. People walking down the street talking to themselves. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in Quran that for those who refuse to remember their Lord, He would appoint to them an intimate friend from amongst the shayateen. And we see people walking around talking to themselves. Oh, that's what we say. Allahu Akbar. We don't know exactly who they're talking to. Could be that intimate friend. A'udhu billah. We seek refuge in Allah from that. But we see these qualities, these characteristics being everywhere, not just some places. You know, you can say in this area of the world, this where it's at. No. It's everywhere, literally. Everywhere, literally. We see people spiritually starved while they're in the middle of luxury. They on vacations. They on big yachts and fine clothes. And the list goes on. And yet they're on the phone crying to somebody across seas or back home, saying how it ain't right. Everybody did something wrong. The whole environment was wrong, but they don't know it. They think it was the people, but in reality, it was the choice. It was the choice, not the people. But this is the way that the people of Thamud was thinking. And this is the way that people are literally trained to think. We're trained to think in this way. To think that this our game will some way, somehow bring us happiness. If we get rich, I'll be all right. I can take care of the family. I can do a whole lot. You got a list of things you'll love to do. A lot of people that actually get rich never do those, just to show. Really, honestly, a lot of people that get rich, they had that list of things they wanted to do if they got rich, never did the things they had on the list. It's reality. Because money can corrupt. So if you don't have Iman, you don't have faith in the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't know that He is the creator of every dime in your bank. He owns it, not you. When you know that, then your bank may increase. But when you think it's your work, your effort, then that's when it all go bad. If you keep it, that's more dangerous. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed the individual to keep the wealth while being arrogant and negligent in their faith in Him, then that's a curse. That's a curse. Because that's the state that will continue to reproduce itself. You never even notice the problem. At least if you notice, you might change. You might wake up. But if the people don't notice, and now we live in a world that changes everything in reference to what's right and what's wrong. These are some of the signs of the end. The Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that one of the signs of the end time is that what was haram would be halal, and what was halal would be haram. They really have made it that. They really have made it just that. And we look strange, honestly. The righteous, the believer, he looks strange. And I say the righteous and believer, and not just the Muslim, because, we may, as Muslims, find ourselves engaged in things that are not beneficial to the Muslim world. And by default, we see those playing itself out in different parts of the world. Yeah, there are enemies of Islam that are a part of a lot of the atrocities and murders and deaths. But there are a lot of our hands as well, the Muslim. I didn't say the believer, though. The Muslim. It is a bit. Ain't no believer gonna participate in any shape, form, or fashion in the murder, the killing, the displacement of any man, woman, or child. Definitely not a Muslim. But definitely not no man, woman, or child. It isn't the Sunnah of Islam. It isn't the Quran. It isn't the way. We find that in the story of Thamud, the warning to not harm the she-camel is there. The scholars say that the she-camel is representation of natural resources. They were the ones who refused to share natural resources equally with everyone. And this is interesting because we live in the society, in the world, not just one part, but the world itself is living just off that, taking advantage of the disadvantage continuously while nobody say anything. While no one say anything. There's enough resources in Africa for Africa to be the most richest country in the world, or the richest continent in the world. However, the resources have made everyone else rich. Nobody ain't said a thing. There are more people that have been killed in Sudan than have been killed in Palestine. But ain't nobody said a thing. These are the realities of displacement for natural resources. Because that's what exists right in Africa. All natural resources, is all natural. Everything is right there. The land is rich. The land is rich. You know, literally in every way you can think. Metal that you can't find nowhere else, gold, diamonds, you know, you just named it, it's there. And again, those natural resources are not being shared fairly with the rest of the world and the people in which actually live on the very soil of it. Right? I would be glad we seek refuge in the loss upon our Ta'ala from being amongst them. But our silence can be a part of the crime, right? Our silence can be a part of the crime. If we refuse to say something, if we refuse to say what is true by the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless if the people like it or not, but in the way that can reach them though. Because as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, speak to them a word that will reach their very own soul. So we don't say it with arrogance. That ain't how it goes. Not at all. But we say it with firmness. We say it with steadfast and yaqeen, certainty. Ain't no doubt in it. We are positive this is the truth. We have no doubt in it. We don't believe it, we know it. Right? We don't just believe that Islam is the truth, we know it's the truth. When we look at Quran and we read it, we see it, its reality. Allah's telling us the truth about the good and the bad of who we are as individuals and as communities and people. We also find in this story, in the stories, in Surah Al-Araf, Surah 7, the story of the people of Lut, alayhi salam, or Lot, that's something like that. They were deep. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, do you commit such immorality? You approach men instead of women. A very clear ayah. Very clear. Very clear. People, I don't know how many are aware of the fact that the story is biblical, right? It's in the Bible, and they have a total way of just saying they don't mean that. It means something else now. The beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the revelation, i.e. the Quran, is that it gave clarity. It is the muhaymin. It is the guardian. And it truly gives clarity. We live in a world right now where modesty is mob, literally. To be modest is a joke to many people. There's no higher. There's no modesty. There's no shame. And I mean, psychology even also confirms that's a healthy concept of shame, right? Right? A lot of people hear the word shame and you think, oh, that's bad. But it's a healthy concept of shame. It says that you got a heart. That's the first thing it says, that you have a heart. And that is a reminder that you have iman, that you have faith. And it can help correct anything in the future. But when you lose the sense of shame, then it's over. It's over. And when we look at the people of his time, Lut alayhi salam, we see that when he spoke the truth, he did it with compassion, but he did it with firmness. He didn't change up. Regardless of how the condition looked, it looked like they might just run up in this house and tear everybody up. Everybody might just get it. This is what it looked like. And he's not assure how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is intending to rescue. How, if it's through, because rescue can be through death. Remember that. Rescue can be through death. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to rescue, we don't know how. It might be literal in the sense of we might get relief in this dunya, or it might be in the akhirah, right? It might be the reward of Jannah. We might be modeled. Wallahi, if I had to go, I promise you, that's the way I want to go. If I had to go, I'd rather go for the sake of Allah. I ain't gonna go there, but alhamdulillah. But definitely, we see that this is a reality where modesty, commitment to marriage, commitment to family have all been changed, right? They have turned what the idea of family into something totally different. They have turned the idea of marriage into the idea of they got all kind of crazy ideas, polys, and all kind of crazy, ridiculous concepts out here, where it's just all about the desire, the hawa, right? It has nothing to do with justice, equality, assistance, help. All of the Quran and the Sunnah has been designed for us to help one another. And we do that through our acts of ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we also do that by our sincere, genuine help to one another, man. If I think that I can do my acts of ibadah in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and abandon you in your need, and think that I should receive a reward, I ain't read the Quran and the Sunnah. I missed it. I ain't read the instructions, the lessons of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the reward in assisting your brother. I ain't read that. I ain't read none of you believe until you truly love for your brother what you love for yourself. If that's what you think, that's the only conclusion. Either you didn't read it, you never believed. I wouldn't believe. Learning is important for us. Learning our deen, studying Quran, reading the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These things are essential, just like catching up on your whatever at work, right? We got different things at work, different jobs, and etc. But there's always something you got to catch up on, regardless of what field it is. And just as you have to continuously stay afloat, you have to do the same with your Quran. You have to do the same with the knowledge and understanding of Islam, the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His life, I think, is really super important to really study. Not just reading Bukhari, because that's wonderful, but to study the seerah of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That, I believe, is truly transformation. I know people that have converted to Islam because they read the story. Literally, they read his story and said, "Man, that got to be a messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going here." Wow. And lastly, we hear of the story of the people of Madian. The people of Madian were deep in economic injustice, just completely unfair in their dealings in every shape, form, and fashion. The idea of the rich staying rich and the poor staying poor, they embodied that thing. They embodied that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells and reminds them in Quran and Surah Al-Araf, give full measure and weight, and do not deprive people, men, of their rightful things, reminding them that fair dealings and business is a must. But again, we live in a world where fair dealings is no longer, in fact, some way of Learning a crooked way is the way, right? Learning some crooked way, regardless of what it is, what field it is, learning some crooked way is the way. If you ain't did that, you almost like you tripping in most people's eyes. In most people's eyes, you tripping. Donald Trump literally got on TV and said, "Hey, I just learned all of the loopholes and X, Y, Z." You know, he made it be very clear. He didn't sugarcoat it at all. I learned all of the ways to get over. And this is the world in which we live in. The reason most people can never work together is because everybody's trying to figure out how they can get over them. How can I work with you if I want to get over them? If I want to figure out how it's going to be all about me and not about us? There's no way that you can work with one another. That's a problem because of the individual. We don't, we in America, it really had a very historical group kind of identity, right? You had to be, or you was more likely identified with a group. And that group really was where you would tie your kind of loyalty to some degree to. Regardless if it was the disenfranchised group or the aesthetic group, regardless of what group, it was still that reality. Now today is individuality, right? It's individuality, there's no more group, even though we might, collectively be in a group. And that disease has plagued even the Muslim community. One of the reasons we don't work together is because typically we are trying to figure out something else. When everything we need, right, is right there, right here in the masajid, right? If it's a particular talent that I'm looking for, it's right here, right? But the first thing I'm looking for is the belief in La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's the first one. And I get it. We might want to do different things, but that's the beauty of humanity. That we are able to do different things. That's what makes a community. It ain't no one idea, or no one way, or no one person. No. It's all of the talent. We see in these stories of these Rasul. We see in Hud, Salih, Shuaib, Lut, alayhi salam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, peace be upon them all. We see in them and in their people the diseases of humanity. And we live in a world right now that actually have all of those diseases. We live in the world right now that has all of those diseases. That's one of the beauties of the Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He embodied the example of the Rasuls that came before him. And he is the ultimate example. Because we need that example in a world that is filled with disease. Alakum as-salam, Sayyidina Muhammad. Oh Allah, send your prayers and your blessings upon our Prophet Muhammad. The Muslim is called to be a witness against mankind. That duty comes with addressing the ills of society, because we have to adjoin what is good, forbid what is wrong. We can't do that inactively. We can't do that just sitting in the masjid. That ain't gonna work out. There is a hadith that has been cited by scholars as motivation for action. Its authenticity is not there, but it's very powerful. What is it? It says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent an angel to destroy a town that was deep in sin. When the angel got to the town, he had noticed one in sujood, prostration. So he went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and says that I seen one of your abs amongst the people. Do you still want me to destroy it? And according to this hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yeah, and start with him first. For he was amongst them and did not warn them. It is a job and a duty upon the Muslims to definitely be a warner of that which is promised, but also a representation of Rahmatan Alamin, a mercy to mankind. We have to be a representation of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to mankind. This is what we find in the example of the Rasuls. We find them facing the challenges with a kind heart. We find them facing the challenge with steadfastness in the message of La ilaha illallah. We find that. We find them not taking it personal because these people rejected them on a high level. They called them liars. They called them mischief makers. They called them delusional. They called them betrayers. They called them everything. But they didn't respond with their emotions. And they didn't stop. They didn't stop. We find in the story of Jonah, Yunus, alayhi salam. We find in his story, when you think that you can just walk away, that ain't how it works. That ain't how it works. That ain't how it works. An ultimate lesson for mankind forever, but truly for the believer. An example for mankind forever, but truly for the believer, because we follow and we see the example of the Rasuls, all of them, and we see the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He embodied them all. He embodied all of the characteristics, and he was faced with all of the challenges. We think that they was just misfortunes. They weren't. They were challenges for our example forever. He became the perfect example because he lived it. He really lived it. He really lived it and faced the challenges, the attempted murders, the boycott, the liar, the mischief maker, the betrayer. Literally, you think of it. They call the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam such, but he never took it personal. When he was messing with his name, he says, "Hey, I praise the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ain't my name." I mean, this is how he looked at life. Instead of saying, "You know what, man? Who are you talking to? Let's fight." That wasn't his position. When the Jew said, "Asmu alaykum," when he said, "Death unto you," the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Wa alaykum." His wife, Aisha, radiyallahu anha, right? She asked, "Did you hear what he said?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Wa alaykum." I mean, this was his. I ain't tripping. I ain't tripping about that. I got a mission. And they'll do the Shia team. They would do things like that. They'll try to invoke us or provoke us to say and do things. That's the goal. But if we stay on the course, and don't take it personal. And don't take it personal. Because if we take it personal, then that's when we lose fisabilillah. We lose for the sake of Allah. It becomes personal. And something can start off like that. Take note of that. We can start off fisabilillah in a particular deed of reminding, and it really works. This reality really works when we're talking about people we love, right? People we love. We can start off trying to help fisabilillah, but their rejection makes it personal, right? We take that a little personal. We don't appreciate that. And we begin to address them with that spirit, right? With the spirit that I don't like your rejection. And that destroys everything, though, unfortunately. You don't get nothing across. Nobody get nothing accomplished. You both walk away disliking one another. And you would think that they just were rejectors of the truth. But you may not have delivered it. You would think that they were rejectors of the truth. But you may not have delivered it. A'udhu billah. We seek refuge in Allah from that. I pray that we can embody the example of the compassion to an arrogant society. I hope that we can offer a solution of the reminder of taqwa of Allah, having taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to an arrogant and an arrogant society. I pray that we can bring back modesty to a society that has lost it. I pray that we are able to be an example of justice economically as well, and be builders of economic progress. That's how we can establish economic justice and support. It won't be really changing the laws or trying to talk to a particular political party or none of that. Honestly, it'll just be back being that real example of it. That's it. To try to change the mind and heart of the people we already seen in the stories, what these people said. We know that's what they, so we still should warn. We should still warn. We should still be the reminder. But at the end of the day, we're not surprised at no crazy stuff. We really ain't. We're not surprised if they say you're a liar. We're not surprised if they say the Quran ain't the truth. We're not surprised when they say, man, I believe X, Y, Z. My forefathers. We're not surprised in that. My parents weren't worshiping that. I ain't worshiping that. I mean, people say that, really. This, right now. People still say those very same things. And you'll say to yourself, like, wow, you really saying you worship God according to your family? That's crazy. That don't even sound like God you worship no more. I mean, honestly, but they will not be able to understand sometimes. We don't know their condition. It's between them and Allah. Our job is just to be the reminder. And along the way, be builders of progress. Be builders of economic justice. Build job opportunities, job training. Build these things. Because we have a society that's really looking for that type of care, right? That type of concern. Because everybody, even the nonprofit organizations that exist, they all in it for the money. I mean, just you know, if you know anything about nonprofits, you'll know what I mean. They're all in it for the money. It ain't really about change. They really want the conditions to stay the same because it keep the check. It's just like prison, right? They don't want prison to stop, really. That's just the reality. You know how many communities within these different parts of the world, Indiana, Illinois, and wherever else, how many communities survive off that? They don't want that to stop. It is a part of the economic injustice that they want to continue. So we as Muslims, we can't go looking to think the solution is to change the heart of those who are steep in their position, but to be the example, but to be the living example. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahabas, they built the example. They built the example in Medina. They literally built the example. One of the first ways of building that example is getting a relationship with the people that's in the community. And we find that in the covenant, or as some people call it, the Constitution of Medina, right? But we find that having, hey, look, y'all, we got to live together. This is what we gonna do. This is how we trying to do. Not simply saying, hey, I'm living in the community. Don't mess with me. That'll work out. No progress. And what example of the Rahmatan Alameen are we at that point? What example are we as a mercy to mankind? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to be all of the things in which the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has been commanded to be. I mean, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the relief to the brothers, sisters that are in far off lands that are suffering. I mean, amen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unite the Muslim Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ameen. May He unite us in effort and objective and in impact. If I have said anything that is of error or wrong, it was truly from myself. And I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you not to remember any of that. If I said anything that is of good, it was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow it not just to go in our ears, but be in the actions of our lives. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.